I remember being like, oh my God, like, it's a real language, it actually works. Now, it was like speaking a code, like, wow, if I make these particular sounds with my mouth, I can get a ticket to Paris. And it was really bizarre to me, like, that the language actually existed and people actually spoke it. It was like a really weird experience. Hi everyone, so in today's video I am going to be talking to you about when did I first start being able to speak in French, how long did it take me to start speaking French, having conversations, things like that. This was partially inspired by a comment that I received asking me to talk about how long did it take me to be able to start talking in French. So I thought I would give you, you know, like the whole story of my all of my experiences speaking French during my French learning journey, so that you can see what it was like for me. It's different for everyone else, depends on your kind of situation that you're in. If you're starting learning French in a kind of crash course in Paris, you're gonna probably be speaking French conversations within, you know, the first month or something. But if you're like me, then you probably won't be. So for those of you who don't know, I am self-taught French. I've been learning French on my own for about 2 years properly, and I did do a short course in Paris, which obviously wasn't self-taught. And before that, I did do a little bit of French at high school, but I didn't like participate or anything. And I just finished filming a video about that. So if you're interested in my early experiences learning French, that will be linked in the description below. So let's begin. In October 2014, it's now, I don't know what time it is. It's 2017 now, okay. In October 2014, I decided to start trying to learn French again, although it wasn't serious. And I started on Duolingo. Bear in mind, this is Duolingo in 2014, so it has changed a bit. But Duolingo at the time, the kind of speaking exercises on Duolingo, you could just like cough into your phone, and then it would put like a green tick, great pronunciation, you know. So I didn't use the kind of speaking elements of Duolingo when I first started playing around with French, simply because it didn't work. So I felt like there's no point if it's not actually listening to me. But I don't know whether Duolingo has changed since then, probably has. Then in January 2015, so just a couple months after starting kind of like playing with the idea of learning French, I visited Paris. So obviously during this time I was speaking French a little bit, ordering things in restaurants, kind of pointing at things, and also saying stuff like merci, salut, etc., but not a lot. In March 2015, I got in a relationship with my current boyfriend, who is French, and yeah, interestingly, we didn't really speak that much French. I don't know, again, I've made a video about why did I decide to learn French for my boyfriend or whatever. That will also be linked below. It's called Learning a Language for Love, I think it's called. And anyway, I decided to swap from Duolingo to Babbel, because Duolingo, at least at the time, had a lot of mistakes in it. So I had to keep on like suggesting corrections to Duolingo, and then they would always email me and say, oh, thank you, yes, we've changed it now, you're right. But when you're suggesting like 50 times a day things that are wrong with Duolingo, I lost a bit of faith in the program. So I swapped to Babbel, and I have of course made lots of videos about Babbel on my channel, which will be linked in the description. So when I started Babbel, I started again learning French from the beginning, and this is the point, March 2015 is when I like to measure when I began teaching myself French. So in the first month of learning French, I didn't talk to my boyfriend in French. He didn't really teach me out. I was doing on Babbel. On Babbel, it does ask you to pronounce words, and in my experience with my particular laptop, it's very accurate at determining whether I pronounce the words correctly or not. And so I was speaking a little bit, you know, pronouncing words, but I wasn't having conversations, and again, I wasn't really talking that much, you know, it wasn't like I was trying to talk with my boyfriend in French, I wasn't. In April 2015, so this would have been a month after starting to learn French kind of properly, self-taught, I visited Paris again, And so again, it was kind of the salut thing, but I wasn't really having conversations and whatever. It was just a bit more exposure to the French language, if you wish. Summer 2015, so this is now like kind of 5 months, 6 months into learning French. Again, I wasn't having conversations with anybody. I was just sort of reading out sentences on Babbel, and I did share with you in a video, which will be linked below, some recordings of my early French pronunciation during that time. I think the video is called like, I don't know, top secret Babbel recordings, something. I don't know what it's called. So again, I wasn't having conversations with people, I was just doing Babbel. I had very low self-esteem in terms of speaking French. I thought my accent was very poor and I didn't really want to talk French with anybody. Had I been forced to, I probably could have had conversations at this point. So about 6 months in, I probably could have had very simple conversations about topics that I'd done on Babbel. So I guess if someone asks me, like, talk about your family, or what sports do you like doing, or where did you go on holiday, could probably have had very basic conversations at this point about 6 months in, but I didn't because I didn't want to. So September 2015, so that's about 6-7 months after having started learning French properly on Babbel, I finished learning the core French courses on Babbel. And I started visiting Paris very, very frequently, every other week, to see my boyfriend, and then this is when the kind of awkward interactions with French people start. Ugh. So I was very anxious about being around French speakers because I was worried all the time that somebody would speak to me. I did make a vlog in my first week of visiting Paris. It's called Anxiety and Pas du Sceau, and basically the vlog is just me being anxious all the time that somebody will talk to me. So I'm so anxious that, oh, I'm going to the park, I hope no one talks to me. And then when I'm at the park, I get a bit lost because there were some people and I didn't want to walk near them because I was afraid they would talk to me. So it was very, 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 I did not want anyone to speak to me in French. I was very, very anxious about being there. But on several occasions, people did talk to me in French, and I will share them with you. So one of the first ones was one time that I went to the park. I was brave enough to go to the park. A lady was there taking photographs of a squirrel, and I have mentioned this story in one of my other videos. So she was taking pictures of this squirrel. She had some nuts and she was feeding the squirrel nuts, and then she was taking pictures. And so I smiled as I walked past, and then she spoke to me. My heart sank. I thought, oh God, no. So she was just talking to me, and I was like, oh, dear. I thought at some point I have to say that I don't speak French. So I said to her, désolé, je suis anglaise. No, I didn't say that. I said je suis anglais, but I should have said je suis anglaise, but I said je suis anglais, and I beat myself up for like months after, like, oh, I said masculine, I said I was an Englishman, I should have used the feminine, and I was very upset that I used the wrong feminine. I used masculine instead of feminine. I was very upset about this, so much so that when I was always traveling around in France, I would have like this sentence ready to say, pardon, je suis anglaise. Like, I had it all the time ready to grasp if somebody spoke to me. But I was so worried after that encounter that I would use the wrong gender that I actually changed it to, pardon, je parle anglais. I think because then I didn't have to worry about saying anglaise. So yeah, she showed me this squirrel, and I was like, yeah, I don't speak your language. And she just continued talking to me as if I hadn't even said that I was English. So I said something like, oh, il est très mignon, or something like that. I mean, the woman was really nice, but I didn't know what she was saying. Other kind of horrible things, not horrible things, but things that made me very anxious was that, especially when we first moved in, we had a lot of deliveries of furniture, and I was always worried that someone, well, we had a couple parcels delivered, the phone would ring, and then I would just go, oui, troisième étage, yes, third floor, and that's all I knew how to say. So if the phone rang, I would just pick it up and go, oui, troisième étage. Like, it could have been anything. It could have been like, hello, I'd like to murder you, and I would have been like, oui, troisième étage. Like, and then just let them in. But I was worried all the time. That was all I knew how to say. Oui, je crois c'est message. That was it. So yeah, and at some point our toilet broke and the landlord came over. Luckily he spoke English, but he didn't know some words in English, so it was like kind of awkward, and he was French. I don't know, the toilet was broken. I don't know, but I didn't like all these, you know, I didn't want to, I was very anxious, you know. Oh yeah, and some points, I've got a whole list of like terrible things. So even though I was inside the flat, I would still be like being attacked on all sides from people wanting to speak French with me. So at some point some guy knocked on the door. He just wanted to check, was our internet working well? But I didn't really understand. So I tried to say internet box. So I said boîte d'internet, you know, which is what I would say, but apparently they don't call it boîte d'internet, they call it like an internet box, like it's like kind of anglicized, I don't know, but they don't call it boîte d'internet. So I was just like, oh, le boîte d'internet, c'est parfait, like, and he was like, oui, okay, and like, that's all I managed to say, the internet box, it's perfect. And then at some point we went to one of Max's friends' birthday parties. I must have said salut mwah, mwah, to about 8 billion people who didn't even talk to me because they didn't want to speak English with me all night. And then when I left, I had to do it all again, you know. So, I mean, it's not, you know, it was a French party, you know, you can't just expect people to speak English to you, so it's fine. But again, I was just like, being around like so much French, it was like kind of scary for me because I was never in that situation before where I didn't speak the language that everyone else is speaking. So be just surrounded by people and have no idea what they're saying was completely new to me. So now we're kind of in like December 2015. So this is like 9 months after having started learning French. I ordered some food in a restaurant. Max made me do it, but the right food came, so I must have said something correct. And at some point Max had a bit of a panic attack and we had to go to hospital. Long story. There was like a French lady in the ambulance was trying to talk to me, but at some points I just gave up, you know. I was like, I don't speak French, like, yeah, whatever. But at all these occasions I feel like had I tried or had I needed to, I could have spoken in French. I just didn't. So don't think like, oh wow, even if I learn French for 9 months, I still won't be able to talk to people. You know, that's not true. It depends what you make your focus, and I was just a very anxious person. I didn't want to talk to anyone, like, I don't know. So I've written here, at the end of 2015, I was very, very, very good at je parle anglais and je ne parle pas français. I found that je ne parle pas français was better than je parle anglais because if you say je parle anglais, they will try to speak to you in English. So if you just want people to leave you alone, you should just say je ne parle pas français. Okay, January. So this is January 2016. I went out to Paris on my own for the first time from the flat. I went to the Eiffel Tower and I took some pictures and I did a little video. And I remember I had to buy my ticket to Paris, and we didn't live in like the kind of Paris zone, we lived just outside, so you had to get a ticket that was valid on like the kind of train and the metro, but I wasn't sure what ticket to buy. And if you've ever been to Paris, you have to put like the ticket in the machine, and basically if you can't get out at the end of your journey, there's no like officer guy like waiting to help you with your ticket. If your ticket doesn't work, you just have to climb over. If your ticket doesn't work, you have to squeeze in with someone else. And I was so worried that if I would buy the wrong ticket, I would basically just be trapped forever, which, you know, wouldn't happen. But anyway, I was so afraid of buying the wrong ticket that I spoke to the ticket officer at the ticket office in French and bought a ticket from him, and I'll go through the conversation with you. So I went to the ticket office and I said something like je voudrais un billet, but maybe not with an accent like that, maybe like je voudrais acheter un billet. I think I said that, and he was like, oh, and then he came out from his office to the machines, and to my delight, he didn't just click English and then go, there you are. He talked me through the French one, which made me think, oh, at least my accent didn't scream English person. And then he like was, and I was like, je voudrais prendre le RER et le métro. And he was like, oh, oui, oui. And then he like clicked the right one. And then he asked me, do I want a single ticket or a return ticket? And I was like, I did this on Babbel. So I was like, oh my God, I actually know how to say it because I did this on Babbel, but I remembered it incorrectly. I think it's an aller simple is a single ticket, but I said billet simple, so it was almost correct, but it wasn't. But he knew what I meant, and I got the ticket, and I was on such a high after I did this. I was on the train like, yeah, I can speak French now. And then when I realized I said billet simple instead of aller simple, I was like, oh, that's so cringy, that's so cringy. But this was a really interesting experience for me. So this would have been like 9 months of learning French, and this is the first time that I ever used French. And I remember being like, oh my God, like, it's a real language, it actually works. Now, it was like speaking a code, like, wow, if I make these particular sounds with my mouth, I can get a ticket to Paris. And it was really bizarre to me, like, that the language actually existed and people actually spoke it. It was like a really weird experience, like knowing this code that you had to learn. It was cool. So yeah, at some point I also went to the Arc de Triomphe, and I had to say, if you have a European EU passport and you're less than 25, I think you get in for free, something like that. So I had to say, j'ai moins de 25 ans, and then they let me in. I was so like, I've got to say that I'm under 25, but I did it and I got in. So this is my early French speaking experiences 1 year on. So yeah, in April, so like just over a year since starting French learning properly, I ordered some vegan donuts in a shop, and she understood me and I got the right donut, so that was good. Max forced me to do that. I wouldn't have done that had he not forced me. So again, in April, just over a year since I started Babbel, it was just before I was about to move to Paris, and me and Max had like quite a big argument, and I actually booked a hotel room in Paris, which is kind of funny. And then I went to stay at the hotel because I was going to break up with him, I don't know. But anyway, I remembered it was really funny because when I did the Babbel lesson on like checking into a hotel in France, I was like, oh, I don't really need this, because if I was going to go to a hotel in France, I'd have Max with me, or this, you know, I don't really need to know all of this. But then there it was in the hotel going, j'ai une réservation, and I was like, oh my God, I know how to like check into a hotel because I did it on Babbel. So I was like quite impressed with that. But then the check-in went in a bit further, and at some point I went, vous parlez anglais? And then she like started speaking English. So, but I did manage to use some of my knowledge to get into the hotel, so that was cool. Then actually it was just the following day, after we made up and whatever, it was fine. I was in a rush I needed to go and check out of the hotel before 12, so I was running to get the train. But as I was running to get the train, I realized I didn't have my passport, and I thought maybe I would need ID to check out the hotel. So I ran back to our flat to get my passport, and when I went in the lift, there was an old lady in the lift, and I was like, oh no, she's going to speak to me. And so she asked me in French, have you been running? And I understood her. I didn't understand exactly what she said, but I knew she was saying, have you been running? So I said, non, je vais prendre le RER, mais j'ai oublié mon sac. No, I'm going to take the train, but I forgot my bag. And she was like, oh la la, oh la la. And then she asked me something like, do you live here or something? I don't know, but I understood her. And I was like, oui, j'habite au 3e étage avec mon petit ami qui est français, or something like that. And she said to me, you speak French very well, you speak French very well. But she said like, vous parlez français très bien, something like that. And I thought like, that's so nice that she said that I spoke French well, because you hear like kind of stories about kind of like old miserable French people who don't like people butchering their language and stuff like that. And this woman was so sweet to me. I was in a rush and I needed to, you know, but I just talked to her and she said that I spoke French well. She understood me, and I was able to speak to her in French. I didn't have to speak to her in English, and that made me feel like less rude. So that was good. And then I got my bag and then I went and everything was fine. Okay. So after I moved to Paris, and we're now talking like late May 2016 to early June 2016, so this is like a year and 3 months after having started learning French. Sorry, it's a bird, I'm just looking at it. Oh. After having started learning French properly on Babbel, I went to do this French course in Paris. So until this point, you've heard all of the scenarios where I've spoken in French. So there was the squirrel lady, the landlord, the third floor parcels, the kind of dodgy birthday party, the ambulance thing, ordering the food, buying the ticket, the lady in the lift, and the hotel. That's all the scenarios of me speaking French. I then went on my own into the center of Paris to a language school, and I subscribed for lessons entirely in French. Like, from having done only that, like that's all I did. I went, I asked which room is it in, I had to give all of my details in French, I had to fill in a form in French, I had to choose which lessons in French. I did all of it and I was able to do it. I was like, oh my god, like, so that was amazing. You've heard all of the experience speaking French that I had. And then I was able to pay 670 euros of money confidently with the conversations that I had had. So that was fun. But before the course, I had to be put into which class was suitable for me. So I had to have a kind of speaking conversation with one of the teachers for her to assess what level speaking I was at, which was hilarious because, as you know, it had been only the day before that I'd first ever really spoken French with anybody. So that night before, Max did like a kind of fake, kind of mock speaking conversation with me, and that was the first time we properly spoke French, without me doing kind of like weird cute voice that I do. You'll see in the video where I think I did like vlogging for the first time in French or something like that, you hear my kind of like like however I used to speak French. So that was the first time, so a year and 3 months after having properly started learning French, me and Max had a serious conversation in French for the first time. And he asked me stuff like, oh, what do your parents do? Where do you live? Why do you want to learn French? What sports do you like? What do you do at the weekend? What would you like to be in the future? And he ran through all these questions with me. I then went the following day to talk to the lady, and she asked me, the first thing she asked me is, quel pays venez-vous? Which means, what country do you come from? Or something like that. And I heard pays, and I thought she was asking me like, have you paid? And I was like, fuck yeah, I've paid. It's like 700 euros. Yes, I paid. So I was like, oui, j'ai payé. And she was like, no. And I was like, oui, j'ai payé. And then she was like, no, what country do you come from? Whatever. She rephrased it in a different way, and I was like, oh. So I misunderstood the first thing that she said, but then I had a conversation with her. I talked about why I wanted to learn French, how I'd learned French, about my family, about my boyfriend, how long I would be living in France for, what my boyfriend was studying, and I was just coming out of all this stuff, and I was like, I had no idea I could say all of these things. And then she judged me to be upper B1, so it's like upper intermediate level. And again, that was probably like the first proper conversation that I had in French with a French speaker. And she rated me upper B1, so a year and 3 months after having started Babbel. So that was fun. Yes, let's see what other things. Oh yes, so during that that French course, I did a lot of speaking with French, and that really did, I had to speak in French because a lot of the people there didn't speak English, and we weren't allowed to talk in English during the classes and things like that. So I became a lot more confident speaking French. I was able to ask people directions, stuff like that. And I also did a kind of 40-minute presentation in French, and then I did question and answers in French. I did it on, you had to, yeah, you couldn't do it on like anything like, I don't know. So it was kind of difficult for me to choose a topic, and most people did like what country they came from, but I didn't really know anything, like any facts about England. And what I wanted was, I wanted to focus on learning the French for the presentation and not learning the information for the presentation as well as the French. So I did my presentation on like vegetarian restaurants in Paris, which I know, I didn't do the presentation on like why you should be vegan or anything like that. Because I didn't want to, but it was one of the things that I knew was about all these different vegan restaurants in Paris and kind of like vegan food. So I did my presentation on that, and then people asked me questions, and the teacher said it was really good, and most people seemed to be able to understand what I was talking about for 40 minutes. So that's good. If you guys are interested in me finding that presentation on my computer and doing the presentation on YouTube, I can try. So yeah, it seems like that course really helped me start using the things that I had learned on Babbel. So yeah, but in terms of asking directions, somebody did actually ask me directions after I finished the course, and I gave them like really confused directions. Like it was bad. So they just kind of took me off guard as I got off the train and said, do you know where this hotel is? And I was like, yeah, I do know where the hotel is, but yeah, how do I describe that in French? So I like kind of did a lot of things with my hands to try to explain where it was, and then didn't conjugate my words very well, and hopefully they found that hotel. Another thing that happened was I noticed that after this course, I was like, actually, I can speak French. So when people used to ask me stuff in the past, I would be like, pardon, je ne parle pas français, because I did not want to speak to them. But I thought, actually, I can speak French, so I started thinking I should say, oh, je parle un peu de français. So at some point, some people had to come and fix the radiator in our flat in the summer. The landlord wanted to fix the radiator in the summer before it was winter, okay? And so these guys came to fix the radiator. I was there on my own, and he asked me, do you have a Hoover? A vacuum cleaner. So I was like, okay, I know what he said. He asked me, do I have un aspirateur or something? And so I was like, oui. And then I wanted to say, like, I only speak a little bit of French, but I said, je parle français assez bien, which is the equivalent of saying, I speak French quite well. So I wasn't really telling him, like, I only speak a little bit of French. Je parle seulement un peu de français. I said, je parle français assez bien, which was just weird. And he kind of was like, and it was this horrible experience. I just wanted them to get out of the flat as soon as possible. So yeah, and then that starts leading up to August 2016, where I made my first video speaking in French, English girl speaking in French, whatever it is, that's got all those views. So that was almost a year and a half since starting Babbel, that video. Then towards the end of our time in Paris, so now we're talking like, yeah, a year and a half of self-taught French, plus the 1 month course in Paris. I did like a little, after me and Max and I, we had a kind of meal, sort of pizza together on one of our final nights in Paris. And we walked around Paris, around Ile de la Cité and all that place. And I did like a tour in French of all the places, because my Paris geography was very good, and so I was explaining to him like, oh, so the different names of the bridges, and I was talking about, all the different sites you could see, but all in French. So must have been talking for maybe like half an hour. So my French conversation became, was quite easy, and I had access to a lot of words at that time. Then after I came back from Paris, I think I did mention this on one of my videos, I started meeting up with a friend of mine who's English but speaks French, and we would meet up We tried to meet up every week to talk just for an hour whilst we were kind of eating our lunch, try to talk in English about the things that had been happening that week. And so we did manage to do that most weeks between September and Christmas. We did meet up about once a week to talk for an hour in French about the things that were going on in our lives. And I managed to understand her and she managed to understand me. So I guess definitely by a year and a half of learning French, I was able to have conversations about things that were happening in my life. And yeah, I guess that's the answer to the original comment. How long did it take me to have conversations? For me personally, I was having those conversations about a year and a half after having started learning French. Although I think you could have had them sooner had you put more emphasis on speaking. Then you start coming into all the videos that you start seeing on my channel, starting from kind of like January onwards, doing lots and lots of French videos. It's going to become very obvious to see how good my French speaking is. In January of this year, January 2017, so nearly 2 years after having started learning French properly, I did visit Paris again. And I did go into a restaurant, try to order some food, but I went with a friend who is French, and I just let her do all of it. Like that's my downfall, is that if I'm with French people, I will make them speak French for me because it's kind of like more efficient. And if I'm with French people who speak English, then I will speak to them in English. I don't kind of go, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to practice my French. Like I would just think, well, you speak English, so we're going to speak in English. If it's ever a situation where I speak better French than the other person speaks English, then I will speak in French. But if they speak fluent English, it would, in my opinion, be a bit foolish to try to talk to them in French, you know? So, I don't know. Well, it depends on if you want to improve. Well, this video is very long now. So yeah, that's all the kind of that's like everything to do with my French speaking, of my whole French journey. If you did get this far, then well done. I hope this video was somehow useful or entertaining or interesting. And if you want to hear more from me or want to see videos of me speaking in French, then consider subscribing, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.